All right, today topic is NETZACH. We're in the fourth week of the Sefirat HaOmer. And the midah that we're focusing in on Kabbalistically is the midah of NETZACH. And of course, everything we're focusing in on here is how we deal with it. Anytime we talk about the Sefirot in terms of our experience, we have to understand there's the grander concept of the Sefirot, the midot, the attributes by which Hashem, so to speak, used in order to create the world. But we all have a parallel of those in our lives. And it's up to us to wield them in the way that is best depending on the situation. We're going to be rooted in certain things. Some things are going to become more natural to us. Some things are going to feel like we're more rooted in that space. But the idea is that if you're only one thing, then you're really not even that thing. You're not doing that thing. You're a slave to that thing. You're being mastered by that thing instead of you mastering all of your midot. Okay, so and we've spoken about this before, but I wanted so let's jump in and chat a little bit about this concept of NETZACH, which has a bunch of definitions, right? You could define it as dominance, as assertiveness, as you saw. The topic is NETZACH, assertiveness versus aggression. To be able to overcome, to be able to be victorious, the concept of everlasting, eternal. All of these are the concept of NETZACH. A great and more perhaps a lofty example of NETZACH is the ability to go ahead and to assert positive over negative. What do I mean by that, right? For example, it's said about the Shin of a Rabbi, one of the great Hasidic masters, that he would run to the good in a mountain of bad, right? What does that mean, right? Well, it's very similar to the famous teaching by Rabbi Nachman, to find the nekudot tovot, to find the good points. When you go ahead and get into the good points in somebody else, when you're able to go to that and define a person by those things, you recognize that you are elevating, you're flipping the story, and you're elevating goodness over, you're helping goodness to be victorious over the other side, right? So what do a lot of people do? A lot of people, of course, do the opposite, right? They find a certain bad issue in the mountain of good, and then they focus in on that bad issue, right? Very famously, Rav Salanter once took a blank piece of paper, and I think I did it here once for you guys, and wrote like a little dot, a black dot on a piece of paper. He asked him, "What do you see?" He says, "I see a black dot." And he said, "You see, you only look for that one black dot. What about the entire clean, beautiful piece of paper over here?" Right? And so a lot of us, that's what we're doing. But the point is, one of the aspects of NETZACH, and the truth is I'm going kind of in reverse. I'm starting from kind of the more lofty and theoretical, esoteric side. We're going to get down to how we do some of this, how we deal with the aspect of NETZACH in our own lives in a very base way. But it's the idea of asserting the positive, over asserting good over evil. So find a way to go ahead and to do that, to draw strength to be able to do that. Fine, just want to mention that point. Let's get down into it though a little bit more, in terms of the basics, in terms of just the kind of struggles that we tend to have within ourselves, and then also in relationships as well. Okay, so the primary example of the aspect of NETZACH is when we're dealing with a certain Yetzer Hara. We're dealing with a certain inclination, we're dealing with a certain situation comes our way, and then you have a choice what you're going to do. Am I going to try to overcome that thing, which sounds positive, but not always the best idea. Sometimes it's a better idea to kind of like duck under and let the thing pass you by, right? For example, imagine if a person's out at sea, if a person's out in the ocean and a big wave comes, there's two options you have. You could try to swim to the top, right? Or it might be that you see that the wave is so beyond that you're gonna hold your breath, duck under, allow the wave to pass over you, and then come up and live to see another day, right? That, by the way, would be the midah of hod, which is the aspect of submissiveness. And we're going to, God willing, we're going to talk about that next week. There's a lot to say about that aspect and how we see it in a very positive light. And again, all of these Sefirot, all of these Midot, all these characteristics, these are all good things. It's not that one is good and one is bad, or that one is better than the other. It's how do we apply them, right? Again, the word midah, which you usually translate as characteristics, is also rooted. Our characteristics are rooted in our emotional intelligence. So we want to be holding an emotionally intelligent way, and that is rooted in the word for midah as well. Midah also means a measurement. It's all about measuring out the situation and being measured in your response and understanding, okay, when should I use netzach? When should I use hod? When should I use chesed? When should I use gvura? When is the time to extend of myself? When is the time for me to say, hold on a second, let me put a boundary over there, right? We were talking about that the last few weeks. So same thing over here, right? Okay, there's a certain situation comes into my life, a certain big situation comes into my life, a certain Yetzer Hara comes into my life, a certain evil inclination comes into my life, into this moment. Okay, do I swim? Do I try to fight it in a certain way, or do I try to shy away from it? Do I try to go forth into that situation, which is a gray area? Do I try to go into a situation of that puts me in a spiritual danger, maybe, in order to try to gain something from that, in order to try to help someone in that difficult situation? Do I get my hands dirty in order to help that situation and be victorious in that situation, pulling someone out? Or do I say, you know what, better for me to kind of pull away from it because it's not appropriate for me to put myself in that situation and put myself into that spiritual danger? There's no right answer. There's no blanket answer here. It's going to depend on what is the situation, who are you, where are you at, where are you coming from, what's going on in your life, how fresh are you in terms of Jewish exposure? Like, who knows? There's a million different, how strong are you? There's a million different conditions that go into it. And we have to be able to know, and either within ourselves or also to have those mentors in our life and people to speak to, where we can kind of take counsel from, who understand us, who know where we're at, and who understand the situation and understand what's at stake. And again, also very, very important, not only an expert in Judaism and all of that, but also know who you are, right? It says in Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, Aseh lecha Rav, make for yourself a rabbi. What does that mean? That you're going to give them smicha? That you're going to give them rabbinical ordination? Right? Aseh lecha Rav, make for yourself a rabbi. Okay, I appoint you, I make you rabbi. No, it doesn't mean that, right? It means make for yourself rabbi, meaning like, okay, you got to have a rabbi. That means the dude knows something. But then lecha, to you, that you understand that they know you, that it's a personal thing. And so to be able to gain counsel in your unique circumstances, in your unique situation. And so this is again, a constant thing. Am I going to go ahead and fight this? Am I going to go ahead and put myself into this situation? Of course, sometimes situation comes to us. And then the question is, again, am I going to go ahead and push forward? Am I going to go ahead and push forward? Or am I going to kind of take a position of submission or agreeability? And we're going to talk, God willing, more about that. Again, that also gets a bad rap. It's one of those words, the word submissiveness gets a bad rap. It could be like, it could have bad, negative connotations. But we're going to talk about that in a very big way next week, God willing. And we're going to totally, there is totally a place for it in all of our lives. So this is the idea of this kind of duality of netzach and hod. And so when we're talking about overcoming, when we're talking about the concept of netzach, when we're talking about dominance, when we're talking about being assertive, right? The first thing we have to do is to figure out, what do I want in my life? A situation comes about, or maybe we don't have to wait for the situation. And we say, number one, what do I want in my life, right? And that can be the grander question, what is truth in the world? But then, okay, where do I want to be? Where do I want to be going? And then, of course, why do I want it, right? I want to know that clearly for myself, because before I go into any situation, before I need to go into a struggle, go into a gray area, I better be attached with not only where I want to go, but perhaps even more importantly, why I want to go there. What is my goal? What am I trying to align with? What am I trying to achieve, right? And let's be clear again, it's not just about running away from negative stuff sometimes in life. Sometimes in life, we get into gray areas, and I say this all the time, I think I might have said it last week, that a lot of times people will look at a book and we have a book and the book is in black and white, but life is not always like the book. Life is colorful. Life is in gray areas all throughout for most of us, let's say, right? And so sometimes in life, again, it's the idea of how do I align the black and white of the book with my life, right? And by the way, it goes both ways, of course. How do I align the colorfulness of my life with the black and white of the book? But then there's also the reality of the colorfulness of your life. And we have to say, okay, how am I going to integrate those two things in a healthy, balanced way? Because if I squash me, that's not going to work. I'm going to burn out. And if I ignore the black and white of the books, then I'm not moving anywhere forward in my goals and in life and aligning myself with reality, aligning myself with God. That's not good either. But we have to take them both into account in a healthy and balanced way. And that means a lot of times going into situations, dealing and addressing situations as opposed to avoiding them, right? So a good example of this is that the Lubavitcher Rabbi would say that God did not create you in order to not do bad. Let me say that one more time. You are not put on planet Earth in order to not do bad, right? You're put on planet Earth to do something positive, to do something good. Now, yes, not do bad is part of that equation, but that is the background. That's not what it's about. It's just like, okay, don't screw things up along the way, but that's not the goal, right? The goal is to do something positive, right? And so this is where, and so once actually, it's a little story that once in California, there was a guy who was, I think, frequented a certain Chabad in California. And he would hear from the Chabad rabbi in California, quoting the Rebbe saying about doing, the Rebbe was not into big, conferences and everyone getting together for some meeting and this and getting together with all the other people in the Jewish world. And because, a lot of times they would have a meeting in order to set up when the next meeting is so that they can talk about the next meeting. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of mumbo jumbo that goes on at these gatherings, you know what I'm saying? So instead he was all about okay, take action, go for it. And so the guy heard the phrase, I guess, at the Chabad one time, just do it. And turns out he was one of the executives at Nike, and that's where the phrase comes from. There you go. So I don't know if Chabad headquarters got royalties. I'm not sure about that. I kind of doubt it, but you never know. So this is this is very famously now the first Rabbi of Chabad, the Baal he said also a similar thing. Focus on what you want to be, not what you don't want to be, right? And see, you just got to find. A lot of people are always talking and focusing on the Yetzirah, the evil inclination. I got these religious people are doing that, and if you're talking about avoiding evil inclination all day, you're holding in a world of evil inclination. That's your headspace, right? You're so overly focused on that, you're holding in that world, right? So yes, of course, acknowledge it exists, and we got to avoid it and all that stuff. But to be able to go ahead and to move forward and to focus on what we do want to do, to focus on what we do want to accomplish, as opposed to all the pitfalls along the way. Yes, you have to be aware of the pitfalls. Don't get me wrong. I know everything I say, I got to do a backtrack and disclaimer, right? Which is what you have to do nowadays with all things. So of course, those things are important. But if you're focusing all day on the thou shalt nots, you're going to be stuck in those knots. That's your whole space that you're in. That's your whole mindset. So yes, to be aware of them and to respect that and to be, and that's important. But to be focused on going ahead and moving forward and conquering something for the positive. And so this is also the Maharal of Prague also says a similar idea that's connected to this. He would speak about how stubbornness is a spiritual trait. Let me say that again. Now that sounds like a little whack, right? Stubbornness is a spiritual trait. And a lot of times we think about stubbornness as a negative thing, right? But let me give you another word for stubbornness. Ready? Principled. That sounds much better, doesn't it? Right? Well, how'd that happen? Because let's understand that essentially what principled is that you're being stubborn about the right things. You know what I mean? And so stubbornness means it just has a negative connotation because in English we connect the concept of stubbornness with being stubborn about the wrong things, right? And so the Jewish people are referred to in the Torah as an Am Kshei Oref, a stiff-necked nation. And God says, like, when the Jewish people do the sin and they're complaining in the desert and they do the sin in the golden calf and all that, God says to Moses, listen, stay out of Moses, you get out of the way. I'm going to wipe out these guys. We'll start a new lineage with you. They're a stiff-necked people. I've had enough of it. And God says, and Moses says back to God, no. They're stiff-necked people. It's a good thing. Like he says the same thing back to God that as the lawyer, as Hashem was saying, as God was saying, is a problem, right? What is it? It doesn't sound like any Jewish lawyer, right? That you wouldn't necessarily want to hire at first glance. But what we see from this is the point is the trait is a spiritual trait. Why is stubbornness a spiritual trait? Because it means like I am clear on who I am. I'm clear on my mission. I'm clear on my purpose. I'm clear on what I'm going towards and why I'm going there. And it doesn't matter what comes in my way, I'm still going after this thing. That's why it's spiritual, because the physical world can throw at you all sorts of different things, but I'm so attached to who and what I want to be and what I'm valuing in my life. It doesn't matter what anyone's going to say to me. It doesn't matter what obstacles are in my way. I'm going above all of those things in order to achieve my goal. That's why it's spiritual, because it goes above what anything physically that comes your way. And so, of course, if you're doing that about the wrong things, so now you're just using the power of spirituality for the wrong things. You hear that idea? So, but the idea, of course, is to, yes, go ahead, access that stubbornness, access that holy stubbornness, and be strong about that which is correct, about that which is good, and that which is great. So now the question, of course, becomes, okay, when do we go ahead and access this trait? When do we access this trait of NETZACH, of assertiveness? All right. So I think first and foremost, we access this trait when it's an issue of self-determination, right? And this is getting down to bringing it down a notch to relationships, right? When it's an issue of self-determination, right? When someone else is trying to take your power of choice away, that's when you go ahead and step and essentially stand up for yourself. And it doesn't have to be this grand confrontation, although it could turn into that. But you go ahead and have the dignity for yourself to go ahead to step forward and be assertive about your preferences, your feelings, your actions, who you want to be, what you want to be, the choice you want to make, right? And so ask yourself, is this an issue that's in your, as we said once before, your Dalet Amot or in another person's Dalet Amot? Is it in your personal 4 cubits, as they say in Judaism? But it means that your own personal space. Is it your own personal choice, right? Like I say a lot of times to people who are Baalei Teshuvah, that people who have come to a place where they're more Jewishly observant than let's say when they grow up. So a lot of times when a person who takes on more Jewish observance steps back into their old surroundings, or goes back to their family or what have you. So a lot of times people get what they like to call BTS. It's called Baal Teshuvah syndrome. Baal Teshuvah syndrome. What does that mean? That means people go back, they found something that's meaningful in Judaism. They're passionate about it. They found something meaningful in life, some truth in Judaism, some truth in the world. And so then they go ahead and they try, and a lot of times they will try to kind of put that on to other people, right? Kind of push others in their lives to go ahead and to take stuff on in Judaism. Where that's coming from, whether it's coming from a positive place, whether it's coming from an insecure place, whether it's coming from an overcompensation place, it doesn't matter where it's coming from. Usually it's coming, the intentions are good at least. But usually what I'll share with people is like, besides the fact that doesn't work, it's also usually not a healthy thing and it doesn't help much. So what I'll share with people is no. You don't assert your ideals and your values onto others, but also stand strong for who you are, right? If people are trying to, get you to forfeit or to compromise your ideals, your values, so then no, stand strong with where you want to, with who you want to be, right? And so that's the way to assert NETZACH, right? So Don't put your thing. Don't try to get people to change things that are in their house. But also if they want to take you to some place or some, if you decide, if you're taking on kosher or whatever, or something else in Judaism, don't allow them to go ahead and then get you to make a move that you don't want to do, right? And so that's where you assert the netzach, right? And for the other side, for the part having to do with the family or the old friends or whatever it is, for where they're at, there you have to assert the midah of hod. There you have to assert that midah of submissiveness, of being able to contain the disharmony of others not living the way you'd like them to live. Right? And God willing, that's going to be our topic next week. Very, very important topic. Okay. So now, what happens though when you actually use this idea of a netzach? When you actually do assert yourself to go ahead and to stand up for your thing, using it in a healthy way. Let's say you went ahead and you lived a certain way. It could be, again, the Jewish example I just gave before. I just gave just now. Or it could be anything else. You go ahead and make a change, right? Tell me something. What happens to the people who are around you? You go ahead and make a real change. Rhonda/Shoshana says you get a pushback. That's right. You get supporters and you get haters, my friends. And oftentimes there's more haters than supporters, I'll be honest with you. Like let's even break down the change process. I think there's like 4 stages of making change, right? Step number 1 is you actually go ahead and make that change. You change the behavior, right? Then if you change the behavior, then you would get step number 2 is resistance, right? That's when the haters come in, right? And what do the haters do? The haters, they try to show that your change is fake, right? Either that's bad or that is fake, right? They try to raise inherent contradictions and they try to show it's a hypocrisy, right? Like there's a classic one also for the Baal Chuvas. I know we have some of them here on the line here. But for the Baal Chuvas, it's like, okay, you go back and your family's not so happy with some of the changes you made, perhaps, or whatever, and then a lot of times what they'll do is they'll try to like get under your skin about something. It could be about the changes, it could be about other things, and they start to agitate you, and then eventually you get into some argument, you get some yelling, some whatever, and then especially if it's parents. Especially if it's parents, they'll be like, doesn't your Torah say honor your parents? Doesn't you? Look, do you really believe in this Torah? Do you not believe in this Torah? They'll try to get you. You know what I mean? They'll try to raise inherent contradictions, inherent show hypocrisy, and then ultimately try to put you in uncomfortable situations in order to try to get you to make small compromises that chip away at your principles, at the change you made, at your beliefs, at your priorities, at your desired change. Right? They'll also, by the way, try to make you feel like you need to justify yourself and justify your choices, right? Which is also, again, something where you can go ahead and put the netzach down there and basically come to a place within yourself that like, no, I don't need to justify myself. You know what I mean? Especially if they keep trying to get you, right? If they start being attacking or manipulative, you could be like, all right, do your thing, and not go into your own, the answers to their questions, when especially they're not really looking for the answers. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to know. Well, do they really want to know? So if they do, if they're asking from a place of inquiry, and by the way, you can also share like, what you know, and then also, what I don't know. Well, I don't have all the answers at this moment. That's also okay, right? Anyway, so that's stage 2, where you get that resistance. But then stage 3, and this is the biggest one, right, is perseverance, right? Do we go ahead and persevere with it, right? Do we go ahead and persevere with that change, right? By the way, same thing goes, you could use this, we're talking about interpersonal relationships here. You could use the same thing for a person who takes on any kind of change, physical change. A person wants to work out. First, you start with the change, but then you get the resistance, the haters. Who are the haters? Forget about other people. The haters is your own, your own body, your schedule, your habits. That's the resistance that's raised there. And then are you going to persevere? That's the next step. When you go ahead and persevere, and when you go ahead, back to the relationship idea, when you go ahead and you go ahead and live it out, even in that struggle, and you live it out in a healthy way, and you stand strong for who you are without trying to put it on someone else, and you become, that it's strong with you to the point that this becomes you now. Now stage 4 occurs, which is that now they have a decision to make. The people around you have a decision to make. Do they adopt and allow for and accept and open up a space within themselves and within the relationship for you to be the way you're being, for you to be the new you? Or do they walk away? That's their choice. You don't control that, right? But that decision at some point, consciously or unconsciously, has to be made by them. Because why? Because the relationship has changed. Why? Because you've changed. And if you're a different person, so then the relationship has shifted. And now the question is, will they access their midah of hod in order to accept you where you're at? Or will they walk away? Right? And by the way, when the haters, they're going to do all sorts of different things potentially to try to get you. And we mentioned a bunch of them, show your contradictions, this and that. There's all sorts, especially when it comes to family stuff and whatever, old relationships, people have all sorts of ways of their manipulation tactics. They go into their manipulation toolbox, and it could be yelling, it could be it could be sadness, it could be guilting, it could be, you're breaking the family up, whatever. It could be all sorts of different things of guilt and hate and yelling and mourning, all sorts of things. I once had a guy who became Baal Shiva, and he went and he was becoming more observant or whatever. And his mother once, I think he was with his mother and some other friend and some other friend of his mother's, and I think his mother, the mother, I think, turned to her friend like, and while she's talking to him, and like, I don't know if you become Shomer Shabbat, I don't know what I'm doing. I think I'm gonna have to sit Shiva for you. So, which is kind of funny, back in the day, that's what they would say. There's someone who married out. That's maybe what would happen. But here it's the opposite. This guy becomes more observant, more Jewishly connected. She actually, said, "I'll have to sit with you." The classic story. I don't know. I thought it was hilarious. But so, getting back to this. So, question: why don't people act assertive? There you go. Why don't people act assertive? You tell me. The chat is open, my friends. There you go. Ronda Shoshana for the win. That's the number one thing. The number one thing is fear, not to be confrontational. Exactly. Except to recognize, though, you're not being confrontational. See, that's the point. I guess you are being confrontational because a person has already stepped into your zone. You understand? So it's not like what would be a true, like, confrontational, again, sounds like it's a negative connotation, right? It sounds like you're starting a war, right? You're starting problems. But like that person has already stepped in halfway into your territory, right? There you go. It's people pleasing. That's right. That's right. But so it comes off, right? Exactly. It feels to a person who's coming from the not good place, it feels like, oh, I'm being confrontational. Not being confrontational. The other person's being confrontational before the whole conversation even began, right? So hold on a second. Let me write down some of the stuff that you guys just wrote. People pleasing. All right. Okay. So uncertainty. Okay, that's something else. Said there. Actually, let's deal with that first, even. Right. So people will say, related to the uncertainty thing, people will say, "Who am I to have a strong opinion?" Right. We're gonna get to the fear thing in a minute. Who am I to have a strong opinion? Well, here's the thing. You're not something until you actually are that thing. I know it's very deep, right? What do I mean by that? I mean that, okay, I'm blessed, for example, to have a number of books that I've written with the help of Hashem. Okay, but if you would have come to me before I wrote the first one and said, who are you to author a book? Who are you to author a book about Judaism? Really, who the heck are you? And I wouldn't have an answer for you, right? Except, okay, I have something to share, blah, blah, blah. I think I could express it well, whatever. But still, you can have that like kind of imposter syndrome going on over there. But the answer is, though, after I've written the book, then it's like, oh, okay, Deutsch, the author. Right? And then it becomes accepted. It takes a little time, but once you have done it, so then you have done it. Until then, you're right. You haven't done it. Who the heck are you to do it? Right? All these other people author books, but who the heck are you? The answer is, who the heck were they before they authored the book? So for most people, they weren't an author, at least. They might have been something else. But the point is, okay, you go ahead and do it, and then you're a person who did it, right? And so to be able to get past, I guess, a little bit of that imposter syndrome, go ahead and step forward into that, right? Now, that's number one. Number two, though, is that concept of fear of rejection. Why do people not go ahead and act assertive? Is that fear of rejection. Fear of rejection. And so I want to deal with that a little bit, because that's a big one for people. Big one for people, that fear of rejection, which means fear of being mocked, fear of losing the relationship, fear of somebody not being happy with you, all that kind of stuff. So I want to share with you kind of 4 ways to get past fear of rejection, right? 4 approaches a person can take. Here it goes, okay? Number 1, and this is a big one. I guess this takes some maturity and growth. But the first thing is really to ask yourself, what is the worst possible outcome? If you go ahead and assert yourself here. What is the worst possible outcome, right? Whether the situation is, with a parent, dad, mom, whatever, sibling, friend. What is the worst, boss? What is the worst possible outcome? And open yourself up to that and come to a place where you are ready to accept that outcome. Accept it as a possible outcome. Become okay with it. Become okay with it. And then go ahead and step into whatever that thing is that you need to be asserting yourself for. Right? That's number 1. Number 2, way to get past fear of rejection. Picture that person you're fearing getting rejected by. If this person died tomorrow, would you still be hung up on them? That's an intense one, I'll be honest. But it's sometimes appropriate, right? If the person is ready to not accept or to walk away from the relationship or over whatever this issue is, which is something that's, if we're talking about being assertive, something that's in your domain, then allow this person to be dead to you. I'll give you a reverse example. I remember once, almost 20 years ago, someone I know committed suicide. And I remember I went to the funeral, and all I could think about was like this, I don't know, the way that this person could have, if it was whatever it was, and by the way, this person committed suicide essentially. I mean, he had obviously other issues going on, but there were one of the, probably the main issue or the main thing was this particular person rejected them, a particular girl who I guess he was in love with or what have you. And anyway, I kept thinking, like, this person could have built, like, if everything was so bad, he could have gone in a different direction to build a whole different life. you know, the totally different track. And this was a very special person, to tell you the truth, in terms of just certain things that they did in their life. And I mean, they went into Russia when it wasn't popular, and did all sorts of things for Jews and things like this. He was a young guy, in his 20s at that time, so the person could have built a whole different life. If it was that bad, the person could have gone, okay, that person, like, at some point to come to that place of this isn't an option, and move to another space. I know there's more than that. I know, don't get me wrong. I'm sure that there's obviously much more going on under the surface, but I'm just telling you what came up for me in those moments. And how if we can go ahead and say, all right, these people, certain person who's walking away from me, and that's, by the way, in terms of relationships, that's a very important thing. If a person doesn't have a burning desire for me, then why am I wasting my time on them? Why am I chasing them, right? Yes, put myself out there. Yes, make my best efforts. Yes, admire people. But it's a whole other thing to be chasing in this unhealthy way, right? Fine. Okay, number 3, in terms of a way to get past the fear of rejection, is to understand that focusing on yourself is what's leading to that fear. You're focusing on yourself, how you're gonna look, what's the outcome gonna be for you. If you focus on the bigger picture, that will lead to resilience. If you focus on others, helping others even, that will lead to resilience, getting outside of yourself. The focus on yourself is what leads to the fear. The focus outside of yourself on something bigger, on somebody else, leads to resilience, because when you see that that person is the point, or when you see that that bigger picture is the point. So it's not that I'm not afraid of rejection. It's just like, it's worth it for me to take into my account that there's a possibility I'd be rejected. It's worth it to take that risk and that feeling and all of that for this purpose, right? It's like when someone, is, in a scary situation, in a life and death situation, in some kind of terrorist, God forbid, situation, something like that. When a person lunges towards the guy, when a person lunges towards the terrorist, instead of running away, and they ask him afterwards, how did you do it? He said, look, I didn't know. Maybe I was going to get killed. Maybe I was going to get killed. Maybe I was going to get cut. I don't know. But all I knew for sure was that I was going towards him. I didn't know what was going to happen, right? So how did that person do that instead of cowering? Person in that moment found that the purpose was bigger than himself. That's how he got outside the fear, right? So that means to say that the situation in front of you this fear becomes part of the pawn in front of you that you need to get past. I'll give you another much lighter example, right? Let's say here in Israel, for example, where I'm sitting, anyone who's ever been to a government office, like a lot of times you have to get like all sorts of different documents and like a stamp from this guy and that kind of stuff to get some kind of certification or something. So a lot of times there'll be a bunch of booths. So you go up, your number is called, you go up to the guy. If the person doesn't give you the stamp, what do? Hopefully, right? If you have any kind of resilience, you don't want to look like an idiot. If you don't want to look like an idiot, you got a problem, right? You have to go, okay, the first guy rejects me. I'll find my way to speak to the second guy, the third guy, the fourth guy, because all I need is one stamp. This person, and so a person might look at me weird. A person might want to, push me away or tell me something negative for like kind of weaseling my way into their line when I'm supposed to be in another line. But when you see that the point is, no, I need this piece of paper. No, I need this thing to get the passport. Then this person who, if I was just worried about my feeling in the moment, I might feel that rejection. Now the person is just a pawn that needs to be dealt with in order for me to achieve that goal, right? So I get outside of myself and that little interaction of me and that person in front of me by attaching myself to that bigger goal, to that higher priority, to what I'm shooting for, right? Okay. And another way number 4 to get past fear of rejection is with incremental, consistent exposure. Let me say that one more time. I'm going to mention this next week also, dealing with something else. Incremental, consistent exposure. What does that mean? It means, okay, let's say there's something that you have a fear of, or a fear of rejection, somebody you have a fear of rejection of. Okay, so what exactly is that fear of rejection connected to? And can you go ahead and expose yourself little by little to it? So let me give you an example. Imagine you have a guy who wants to get better at approaching, in terms of dating or something like that, a guy who wants to get better at approaching women, right? Especially, I don't know, how much this is going on in the Jewish community, but this is a good example to make my point. So we're going to use it. Right? A guy wants to approach women to be able to ask to, whatever, start conversations, start relationships, what have you. So doesn't want to look like an idiot, right? Doesn't want to, fearing rejection, fearing being laughed at, fearing being, all of that. So instead of going straight up and trying the whole thing and trying to ultimately end up with her number or something like that, or taking her out on the date right away. Okay, first thing you could do is approach a stranger in the mall, ask them what time is it. Do that enough times to the point, with different people, to the point where you don't feel all that much the butterflies in your stomach anymore. Whether that takes 10 people, whether that takes 100, whether it takes 500, eventually it's going to happen. You get used to it. It becomes part of your natural way of being to be able to do that. Right? Okay. After that, start approaching people by saying, what time is it? And then after they tell you the time, how's your day going? Right? So again, the butterflies might be there, but now at least we've gone to stage 2, right? So et cetera, increasing question after question. And then until eventually a person, you can ask her out without fear of rejection. Right? Now, it doesn't mean a person might not get rejected. It doesn't mean, even, by the way, sometimes the butterflies might still be there. Eventually, by the way, you turn yourself into a situation where you can experience those butterflies in the stomach, but still go ahead and go for it. Right? Still go ahead and do whatever that thing is that you have a certain fear of rejection with, but you still, because it's not about not having that fear altogether. It's about what do you do in that situation when you have that fear come up. Can you go ahead and step into it instead of shying away from life, right? And so that's the thing. Resilience isn't feeling good all the time, right? Resilience is getting better at feeling not so good, getting better at feeling bad. You have a bad feeling, you have a fearful feeling, and you know how to handle that. You know how to step into that and step through it. Right, so it's not always about and everything's great and everything happens for the best and everything's from God. It's not always about that. That's not realistic, right? There's times in life where there's something called mourning in Judaism, right? There's times in pain, and yes, okay, knowing that you can have down times is my point. But then the question is, okay, what do you do in those times? Can you step forward? And there's a time not to. There's a mourning period. There's a downtime also. But can you step forward into the fear? Can you contain, right, that bad feeling and move forward? Right? Can you feel that fear? Step towards it. That's what leads to a sense of courage. That's what assertiveness is all about. That's what dominance is all about. That's what overcoming is all about. That's what NETZACH is all about. Right? All right, questions, thoughts, ideas, my friends. What say you? Feel the fear and do it anyway. That's it. That's good. Crystal clear. All right. All right, my friends. Thank you so much for joining. I hope this is meaningful. I hope you got something from it. I hope you could take something from it. And I thank you for joining me and spending the time. And God willing, looking forward to doing this again next week when we talk about Hod. Have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful evening.